Welcome back, 10 Fears of Retirement podcast. I am your author, your host, Alexander Pushman, and we've made it. We're there. It's the last podcast. So this is podcast number 13, and we're going to be going through chapter 12. I don't want to say it's my favorite chapter, but it is. Walking your path. This is where I'm going to encourage you to take everything we've talked about over the last 11 chapters and bake them into something to make your retirement meaningful. When it comes to retirement, and I'm going to say a lot of the things I've said in past podcasts, tidbits here and there, but this chapter is really about you figuring out what you want to do with that, what I call fourth quarter of life. You've worked hard to get to where you're at. You've worked your whole life. And as human beings, we're so routine oriented. You're used to save, work. You got your 9 to 5, right? And then all of a sudden, retirement. I've been working my whole life for this. And what are you going to do with your time? How are you going to spend your time? And as silly as that question is, I can't tell you how often I see people struggle with it. A lot of the times it's those, more high-level executives, people who are extremely passionate about their work, who like their work. I know I've talked about it in the past, but like, hey, are you going to do part-time? Is it kind of like one of those things where you slowly walk into retirement? Or are you the person who's like, hey, I'm done, didn't necessarily like my work, and I'm going cold turkey, and I'm going to soak this thing up, right? There's no right or wrong, but everyone is different. And with all the different families I work with in my community, I've identified that nobody's the same. No retirement looks the same. I was joking around actually yesterday talking to a client, and it was like, hey, I'm retired and I'm busier in retirement than I've ever been in my life. That is common. Why? It's like my pole barn. I used my pole barn as the analogy with the client I was talking to. I first bought my home, and I had a 6,000 square foot pole barn empty. And I'm like, oh man, there is no way in my entire life I'm filling this thing up. And guess what? It's a year later from when I bought it, and that thing was packed to the gills. Why? My sister started storing stuff for her horses. My dad, he's putting his lawnmower and all of his tools in there, right? And all some of the furniture they don't use. My friends and family are like, hey, I got a boat. Hey, I got an RV. So what often happens in retirement is you'll look up and it's 2 years, 5 years, 10 years into it. And you're like, oh my God, that went fast, because you actually will get busier in retirement. It might be some of those hobbies and the travel and the fun stuff you do, but a lot of it's going to be, hey, you take care of your parents. I have a lot of clients, my in-laws, they retired their first 3 years of retirement. They took care of my father-in-law's mother, who is 93, 94 years old with dementia. So, we got to be prepared for the good and the bad of retirement. And so when I say walking your path, what I want you to do is I want you to be very specific. I want you to be very intentional about how you spend your money and your time. And so I'm going to give you some best practices that I think can only add a lot of value and also help you be more intentional with your time. So the first thing, and again, it's in the book, so make sure you get your copy of the book. This being the last podcast on this series, I absolutely want to encourage you also to set up a time to talk to me. Even if you have a couple small questions, if you want me to do the whole enchilada of the income, investment, tax plan, and kind of give you the whole look, great. Again, there's no cost to that. It's complimentary for being a part of this and being a part of this community. So if you're following along in the book, the first thing I talk about in this chapter is something we call SMART goals, right? These are going to be measurable, very specific goals with timelines and allowing you to be able to grade yourself on, are you doing the things you intend to do? Hey, Alex, I want to have a trust and a will done within the first year of retirement. Great. Let's make sure we get that happen. Send the attorney information of some folks that I work with that I think are a good fit. They start the process. And then whether it's 6 months, a quarter, or a year later when I sit down with them, half of my job's accountability partner. So if you have a good financial planner, they're really going to be your, I call it the CFO, right? Chief Financial Officer. You're the CEO. Your financial professional should be your CFO, but really I'm an accountability partner. I'm going to bring up things that you said you want to do. I'm going to ask you about your monthly spending. I'm going to ask you about big tickets that you're buying. But those SMART goals, okay, those SMART goals. Again, look it up in the book. You can go into old Dr. Google and Google them and go through what a SMART goal is. But it's something that's basically going to say, hey, it's very specific, it's measurable, there's a time frame to it, and it's a yes or a no if you do it. Now, SMART goals should apply to every aspect of retirement. Your finances, of course, right? That's what I'm talking about with people all day long. But also it should be in your fun side of the house. You know, how often do you want to spend time with your kids or your grandkids? Are there specific experiences you want to be a part of with them? Maybe it's their baseball game, right? You want to go to their baseball game every week. Maybe it's a soccer game. Maybe it's a family trip every year. You know, maybe it's something that you want to do a big trip in your first or second year of retirement and take your whole family and pay for it and have that experience, that memory. I've talked about this. I still remember the last time my grandmother, before she passed, took our whole family on a cruise to Hawaii. I remember it. I was like 5, 6 years old, and I can remember it. I'm 40 years old. I can remember it. And it impacted me my whole life. I got to grow great relationships with my cousins and my aunts and my uncles who I didn't get to see all the time. And so these are the fun things, but make sure you have specific goals that you can measure. And I always have a routine where me and my wife, and she doesn't necessarily like it every year, but, you know, we do it, is, sitting down sometime between Christmas and the New Year and going through our goals for the year, financially related. You know, and for me, there's kind of the 5 components of life. Yeah, you have your family, right? You have your faith, right? You have your fitness and your health. You have your financial situation. And then for me, career. And so, you know, I'm always looking at these 5 areas of my life and having very specific goals around them and then reviewing them at the end of the year to say, hey, you know, there was a quote, and I don't know where it came from, but they basically said, hey, you can accomplish a lot less in a day than you'd like, but you can also accomplish a lot more in a year than you can ever understand. And the concept of that is you're not going to get everything done at once. All things don't happen at once. One thing at a time, living in the now and focusing on what you can do today in your retirement, in your life, to have a year that you can look back on and say, man, that was an amazing year. I did a lot of things. There's always good and bad. That's the game of life. It's going to throw us curveballs. But being intentional about the time that you have. And there's a story I think of when I think of like the whole walking your path. So the first thing, again, set goals, use SMART. There's other ways to do it, but make sure they're specific, they're measurable, there's time frames on them so that you can judge yourself and be aware of what your time traps are, where you are and aren't spending money that aligns with that retirement picture. But there's a story. There's like I'm trying to think of it. It was like the Barclays. So there's this race called the Barclay Series or Barclay Marathon. And these guys basically run, and again, I might butcher this, but they run this marathon in like Tennessee somewhere in the mountains. And it's like the hardest one. It's invite only. And one year, every year, they'll invite one person who's got no business in this. So it's all like ultra marathoners. People are like highly decorated racers and hikers and runners. And then they'll always invite one person who puts their application in who's got no business doing it. And it's like a running joke in this Barclays race. And there's a whole docu-series on it that you should watch. It's worth it. But my point to it is there's this guy who ends up winning the race. And he tells his story of his dad. And his dad basically worked his whole life, grinded it out, saved, lived frugally month to month, right? And I'm sure I'm connecting with some of you out there who do this. And then he retires. And it was like literally like the day he retired or like the week before he was retiring. I can't remember exactly when it was, but the guy dies. His dad dies. And the son really had an interesting perspective. He's like, my dad worked his whole life. He didn't have any fun. They never went on trips. He didn't do anything for himself. He didn't have hobbies. He just worked for the family. And then the week he's supposed to retire and start enjoying himself, he passes away. And so a lot of that money went to the mom, went to the son. And he's like, I'm not living my life that way. He's like, I'm going to do this stuff now. So wherever you are in your walk, I would encourage you is you never know when that time stamp's getting clocked. You never know when we're going. And I would just encourage you to, again, set specific goals around spending time with your family. Maybe there's friends you haven't seen in a long time that you need to go visit. Maybe there's hobbies that you've forgotten or stopped doing because of work, or you've always wanted to do. Be intentional. Make sure you're setting up this time. One of the other things I talk about in this chapter that I think is important, community, charity. Maybe you're not going to do part-time work, but you're very passionate about the church. Go volunteer with the church. Maybe there's a 501c3 or a nonprofit locally that you love and what they do is amazing. Make sure that you're getting involved. And maybe it's a volunteer thing where you're only doing it like once or twice a week, once or twice a month, whatever that cadence is for you. But I would encourage you to 100% get involved with the community, get involved with those charities that resonate to you, and have some fun with this thing. You've worked your whole life to get here. So walking your path, the last thing I'll kind of throw at it, this is a quick one, but I want to make sure I'm encouraging you, is I said this a couple podcasts ago, and I'll say it again because it's a good one. Have fun with this. Maybe you're married, right? Or you're a single person. Go have dinner with somebody. Go have lunch or coffee with somebody. Maybe it's your spouse. And write down your goals for retirement. What are the things you want to do? What's the time you want to spend? What are the hobbies you want to do? What are the places you want to visit? What's that bucket list? And then prioritize that bucket list and start scheduling it into your life. Go buy the tickets. Go put it into your calendar. Because if it's not written down, it's going to be forgotten. If it's not calendared and you don't take action, it probably will not happen. So take this time you have and be intentional about your life's work. You've worked hard to get to where you're at. I say this to my staff all the time to put it in perspective because, we're in this business and I talk to people all day long about their retirement and their money and their investments and their taxes and It can get monotonous on my side of the fence. And I always remind my staff, hey, they've worked very hard talking about the client. You have worked really, really hard to get to where you're at. We need to work just as hard to help them carry out their goals. We need to work just as hard for their money as they've worked to gather this money. And it's a philosophy thing, and it's a concept thing, and it's a moral compass thing. But make sure that you also have a team around you is doing what's in your best interest. Listen, I'm offering, hey, I'll do an appointment for you. I can help you out. I'll give you my 2 cents. I'll put these plans together. It may or may not be a good fit, and that's okay. Good news is I've reached a point in my career where I can do this type of stuff because I love it. I enjoy it. I love the education side to it. But whatever it is, just make sure you have a team that knows what they're talking about and they have your best interest at heart. Because unfortunately in this business, like every other business and industry, there's good and bad. There's good advisors, there's bad advisors. There's good cops, there's bad cops. There's good doctors, there's bad doctors. And it all stems back to their moral compass and their heart. So I want to encourage you to take advantage of what we're offering because obviously I am biased to my own belief system. I know how I do things. I know how I operate. I always kind of go by an old saying from Mark Twain. If you never lie, you don't have to remember anything, right? And life gets pretty darn easy. It's like that. If you just do the right things happen. So I would encourage you, whether it's your financial advisor, whether it's your real estate professional, your attorney, your CPAs, make sure you have a team around you. If you don't, and this doesn't matter if you have a net worth of 100,000 or you have a net worth of 20 million, it's all relative. It's your life savings and it matters to you very, very much. So make sure that you're taking advantage of these resources and these people around you. And then one thing I'll just kind of say is Medicare. I've talked about it before. I'm not a big fan of Medicare, right? I'm not passionate about it. I know it. I'm licensed in it. I can do it, but I don't like it. So I refer people out to a Medicare specialist who's very passionate about it. Same thing across the board. Don't work with people who aren't passionate about their work. Don't work with people who are desperate. Because when people are desperate, they will do desperate things, and usually that's not in your best interest. So this is me kind of getting up on the ivory tower and talking to you. What I would say as we kind of wrap up this last podcast is I truly, truly from the bottom of my heart, I hope that you've gotten some good things out of this. I hope you've learned some things. I hope you've been brought to some things that maybe you weren't aware of that you're like, uh-oh, didn't know about that. Probably need a plan. Good. Awareness is the key. I've said that over and over again. If you're not aware, you can't play the game. So I hope you've gotten a lot out of this. Please make sure that you got your copy of the book. We're giving away for free digitally. You can get your PDF, download it. Again, you can set up a time to chat with me if that works for you. But I am hoping that you got some great stuff out of this that can change your retirement, that will help your retirement. And keep this in mind. You can find me at foguthfinancial.com, Foguth financial.com. We are putting stuff out every single day, every single week, educational, surrounding financial planning and retirement specific. We are retirement experts. That's what we do. That's what I do. And we've worked very, very hard to create proprietary software, a proprietary process that we make it easy and understandable for people to take in. So make sure you're following us. If you've enjoyed this, make sure you again sign up and take advantage of these good freebies we're giving out. But I just want to say thank you. I hope you've enjoyed it. Do not hesitate to reach out. That's what I'm here for. And again, God bless you. God bless your retirement. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful golden age of that fourth quarter of life. And do me a favor, if you guys need anything, do not hesitate. Thank you for joining me on the 10 Fears of Retirement podcast. Again, I'm the author and host, Alexander Pushman, and I hope you got something good out of this, and we'll see you around. Thank you so much.